Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. Today I'm excited to be talking to the author and the illustrator of this wonderful new book, Caged, about the experiences of a Hmong girl who is in a refugee camp. And it's all about the power of imagination and about resilience. So we're going to be talking to them about how they came up with the book and how they conceived of it. So again, that book is Caged. So we are going to be talking to Kalia Yang and Khou Vue. They're going to be joining us here in just a minute. We do this every Thursday. Usually we're on at 2 p.m. Eastern. They were very accommodating for me to come on at an earlier time today since my daughter's in a sports camp, so we had to adjust the time. But normally we'll be back to our, most of the time we'll be back at our 2 p.m. Eastern time. But we're on here every Thursday. We're just trying to help spread the word about really wonderful, diverse children's books. So if you want to support us, of course, we would love to have your donations. We are a 501c3, so your donations help us continue to be able to do this kind of programming. We also have a flash sale going on right now, so any authors or publishers who are listening, be sure to take advantage of that, because if you get it before the end of June, then you can save 30% on your sponsorships for this year's big event in January. And again, we're going to be talking about Cage. We're going to be talking with the author and the illustrator. We're talking to Kalia Yang and to Khou Vue. Hi, welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for joining us today. This has been for me, one of the most exciting books that's come out this spring. It's so beautiful and really powerful, and I think a very timely message. Even though it's something I know that was based on experiences that happened years ago, and yet it's still so relevant today because there's of current events. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Well, why don't we start with, maybe you could each just introduce yourselves and then tell us, what was your journey to becoming an author and to becoming an illustrator? Is it something you always thought that you would do?
I'm happy to go first. So my name is Kalia, and I'm a Hmong American author working from the Twin Cities, St. Paul specifically. That's where I'm coming from, my office in St. Paul, as my kids are playing outside in the jumping house. Writing was something that I didn't know could ever be a life for me. I came to this country as a refugee kid. I've been born and lived in a refugee camp for 6 years. When we came here, all I knew was A, B, and C. I remember this teacher saying, say your ABCs, and I'm like, A, B, and C, that's it. And the teacher says, no, say all of it. And so my journey into English, into writing was not so easy. My parents, like generations of immigrants and refugees before us and after, they said we needed doctors and lawyers to survive in this country. So I came here thinking that maybe if I was good at school, I might become a doctor one day. But my grandmother passed away in my senior year of college. My grandmother, who did not know how to read or write, and her biggest fear was always that she would be forgotten. I became a writer to tell her all of the things that I would never forget about her, but also in the hopes of the world to remember with me. So I was 22 when I set out on the journey, and I'm 43 today. I'm now the author of books for adults and children, and I don't see myself quitting anytime soon if I can help it. It's such a beautiful world to belong to.
Well, we hope not. I hope you, because I mean, such beautiful work, and what a powerful story of how you got started. Khou, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Khou Vue. I'm also based in the Twin Cities in St. Paul. How I got started. Well, I've always been creative, I guess, always drawing. And I remember in kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher loved this drawing of mine. It was like a bird with a worm in its mouth. And then I just, that just always stuck with me, like, okay, maybe I am creative. But then, yeah, my parents wanted me to be like a doctor or a lawyer as well, but that's something I don't think I could ever do. I'm not like super sociable or outgoing, and I can't stand the sight of blood. So that was just not in my career path at all. But in college, I studied graphic design. Just feeling like that might have been like the safe route for a creative career. And then when I had my daughter in 2012, we got so into children's books, and that kind of started me getting more interested in illustration. So once I finally quit my graphic design job in 2018, and then I kind of set out to just develop my style and see like what kind of art I gravitate towards, and then work on that and create a portfolio. And it's been a long journey for me. But this is my first illustrated children's book. So that's kind of just how I got started. And I'm still just getting started. Hopefully there's still a lot more I can do in the future.
What an amazing start. I mean, this is such a beautiful book. And also just a little shout out to St. Paul. I actually went to college there, so beautiful. And I know it has such a big among American community there, so not too surprising. So let's sort of maybe Kalia, maybe you can talk about a little bit about where you got the idea for the book. I mean, obviously it's based on your own experiences, but what made you decide that this would be something you wanted to make into a children's book?
You know, we were in the pandemic, and I was reading a lot about what was happening at our southwestern border. And my daughter one day looked over my shoulder, and there was a magazine spread of children in cages. And she said, "Mama, are those kids in cages?" And I said, "Yes." And then before I could say anything else, she said, "What is it like to be in a cage?" And at first I thought I would know. And then I thought, oh, I was born in one. And so I began talking to her about it. And then, of course, I know about all of the wars that have continued to be, that are waging and raging across the world. And I believed that it was an experience that would be valuable right here, right now, relevant to so many children who are born in places surrounded by guns. And so I wanted to make it a children's book immediately. And the title came to me very early on. It was going to be called Caged. And it was going to be a book about children who are waiting for their wings to arrive, as I once waited for my wings to arrive.
It's so beautiful. And so since you knew this is a story you wanted to tell for children, was that something that you had to think about how to tell it that would be in a way that would be age appropriate and yet not wanting to gloss over the realities? Because I mean, it is pretty amazing how you do it. You talk about the soldiers with the guns, and you know, you see the barbed wire. Was it hard to think about how am I going to tell this story for kids who are so far from this kind of experience? Or how did you think about like how to do that?
So it's my 7th picture book. So I have now some experience in this medium, a 32-page spread, what can happen in between the flip of a page. But also, I think the truth of it is always just that the little girl I was has never left me. You know, she's right here. She's always been right here. All of her fears, all of the wonder, all of the magic, and the what she considers insanely boring work of being adults. I mean, all of it is just right here. And so accessing that part of me has always been very easy and very natural, because I've never felt a need to bury her away or to build doorways so that she couldn't enter into the world of my adulthood. But also I think because I have so much respect for children. I have children myself. I interact with children everywhere all the time. And children are born into our world, not some imagined place. And so the work of writing for children has always come very naturally to me. I wanted to be honest, but I also know the importance of having a gentle touch. You know, I have tiny hands, and they're light on the keyboard as well. And so I knew I could handle the material. You know, I wanted to show, of course, not only the constraints, but I wanted to show the ways in which we can free ourselves. I wanted to empower children, as I was empowered in that place where I was born, where I was kept for 6 years, but also to speak to what I see in my own children, the sense of play, you know, even within the constraints of our home, they're flying everywhere all at once. And that sense of magic and that sense of that duality of life I wanted to capture. So I knew it would be just fine.
I wonder, what your thoughts are when you hear people talk about book bans, and some of the excuses that people give for it is that kids can't handle that kind of material, when obviously, as you know, a lot of kids, like you say, are born into this world. They're not born into an imaginary place. I love how you put that. What are your thoughts when you hear people talk about that?
I think it's so sad. It presupposes that we can control the worlds of children, which is, of course, impossible to do. Our own worlds, we can't, we have no control. That is a spark of life, in fact, the fact that we cannot control all of the things that yearn to live in our world, whether we see them as good or bad or anything else. And so part of my job as a mother, as a writer, as an adult is always to prepare the children around me as best as I can for the world that is around them, that is within them. And so it makes me incredibly sad when I hear about book banning, and really because I know about the politics, right? The thing, it is a power move, a move to contain, to lock away, to restrict, to silence, to neglect. And as a person from a population that has known genocide firsthand, that's just heartbreaking to me. I know what power can do, but I also know about the power that each of us, that we have within ourselves, that we can share with the world to balance those forces. And so that's what I try to do in my career. Book banning is a construct of the powerful. It is unnecessary. It does not help any of us in meeting each other fully and completely, and in acknowledging that we live in an imperfect world, that the thing that binds us together is our willingness to understand and to extend the boundaries of our welcome.
So beautifully said. And Khou, I want to bring you into this also. I mean, when you first got the material for the book, and the idea for the book, and set about illustrating it, what did you base your images on? Like, how did you go about creating the illustrations?
Well, our art director, she relayed to me things like visual cues that Leah had mentioned. Like, she mentioned that she remembered vividly like the red blowing dirt in the hot sun. So I really wanted to use that like red brown color. I wanted to bring that in. And also Kalia provided a YouTube video of a Hmong documentary about the Hmong resettlement camps, and how they were in the end brought to the US. And so that really helped me so much, like just see for myself how the visuals would look. And then I also found a whole bunch of like homemade music videos, like just photos of real people who lived in the refugee camps in the 80s and early 90s. And I guess because Hmong people are so like nostalgic, right? So they had all their pictures like in a slideshow on YouTube with really sad music, and that helped me a lot because it kind of showed me like their mindset during that time. Like most of them were like young teenagers, and then now they're here and they're like middle aged, right? So that really helped me visualize and think about their mindset, and that helped me put the images together.
And then did you also have that kind of that process of thinking, okay, now I have these images, how am I going to adapt it for a children's book, as opposed to just a straight kind of reproduction? Like, how did you think about how to fit it into this kind of format?
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, for myself, I kind of always really liked like my first kind of introduction to illustration is kind of through like the conceptual art for Disney. So I really love the work of like Mary Blair. So she did like a whole bunch of little golden books as well. So that kind of mid-century style, I felt like it's a little approachable and simple. So I felt like that would be kind of good for the story and the darker material of like war and guns.
Right, right. Yeah, and so to go back to that, this is such a difficult topic, and yet at the same time, it's about hope. It's about the power of imagination. I love how you said it, Kalia, like the power that we all have inside ourselves to free ourselves. So what do you hope that children take away from the book? Maybe Kalia, we could start with you.
The duality of our world, how even in very complicated circumstances, love abounds. You know, one of my favorite spreads, Khou, and I don't know if I ever said this to you, is when the beautiful aunt has learned that this kid is leaving, and they go on this evening walk, and she waves at the descending sun. You know, she doesn't wave to the girl, but she waves at the descending sun. It is a world ending. It is a world emerging. I that spread, every time I get to it, I get all choked up, because we are generous in our love toward each other, and that's really a message that crosses my whole body of work. Love is what allows us to open up our hearts, open up our possibilities for others, to coexist, to realize themselves. And so that is, of course, a governing message. But for me, particularly with Cage, I think it's about the beauty of child's play. It's about these kids, you know, in this place who imagine a movie set where bicycles can be fast as cars, where they can drink from waterfalls and carry baby dolls, and how the lure, the possibility, the invitation to a better place gives them the courage to leave. Right. And then also what's so important to me is about how I think when we're young, and even now, we sometimes think leaving, we think about leaving as such a final departure. You know, when my grandma died, when I set out to become a writer, I didn't know that I would find her again in the world. I didn't know that I would find her in others. I didn't know that I would find her in myself. And that across the different spaces of my life, her voice and her wisdom, the lessons of her life would continue to guide me. You know, when we left Bandinai refugee camp behind, I thought this is forever. I didn't know that the place would never leave me, that it would always stay in my heart, be both a place of reckoning, but also a place of realizing who I would become one day. Because so much of who I am, I can trace back to that temporary space that was never meant to exist. In fact, for me, it's become a metaphor for all of life. You know, these spaces that aren't meant to exist, that will be taken over by time, by the wind and the rain, by the elements. And yet, I close my eyes and I can see the grass. I can see that dirt that you're talking about, Khou, flying all around me. Dirt that's orange in the world, but it turns black in my nose. Like that transformation that happens even within myself. And so, yeah, we leave places behind. People leave us, but no leaving is ever final. In fact, even when I'm gone, these books will remain. So there are structures in the world beyond just the holds of memory that will keep us here. Love will keep us here for each other.
Khou, how about you? What do you hope that kids get out of the book when they read it?
Well, I hope it kind of starts a conversation with their parents or caregivers about like where they come from or where they originated or how they came to be in this country, because I feel like it's such a melting pot in the US. Like someone comes from somewhere, someone has been displaced along the line of their heritage, right? So I feel like when I found out like why Hmong people are in the US, like it gave me such this like a huge connection to my identity, and it gave me pride, you know, and I want children to have that sense of pride, and where they come from and why they're here, and just for them to know and have that connection to their identity.
And I wanted to go back also to just to wrap up something that you were talking about, Kalia, about this metaphor of the wings and flying. As you mentioned, when the main character, when she's able to leave the refugee camp and her aunt tells her, your wings have arrived. And that idea of flying, Khou, you capture that so beautifully throughout the book. So first, Kalia, how did you come up with the metaphor? And then Khou, how did you come up with how to conceptualize it in your artwork? So maybe Kalia, you could start.
With each of my picture books, there's always a moment where I'm writing for the illustrator. And I don't know who they're going to be, but I want to tease their imagination. I want to play with their ideas of illustration on the page. So when I was writing, I knew that that was going to be the one. How would it be in the hands of an illustrator, an artist, to see these children drawing cloud patterns on the dirt, pulling their t-shirts, big t-shirts far away from their thin bodies and taking flight? What would that look like on a spread? If an illustrator is intimidated or uninterested, then they're not the right one for the project. But I wrote that and I conceived of it for the illustrator. So for you, Khou, I wanted to make it fun.
And Khou, what did
Yeah.
you think when you got it?
Well, I guess it wasn't really even conceptual. I'm not like a super conceptual person. So I literally showed them flying, right?
But also you have a lot of images of birds throughout the book.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess in the way of having the birds, I felt like they're kind of like this little cue of like connecting to like this place, right? This refugee camp and this time in these children's lives. Like Kalia said, it's always going to be with them no matter where they go. And so that was kind of my thinking with the birds, like this connection to their childhood, connection to the refugee camp, just connection to, yeah, that time in their lives.
Well, thank you both so much. I just love getting to talk more about this because, like I said, this is like one of my favorite books that come out recently, and so it's really a thrill to get to talk to you both. I thought maybe we could wrap up and you could talk about if either of you want to mention other projects that you're working on, other books that you have out or that are going to be coming soon. I'd love to hear about those. Maybe Kalia, you want to start?
So Khou, I have on my desk a manuscript that you illustrated for Green Card Youth Voices. They're asking for a blurb. So that is something I have to do today. So that is on my radar of to do, but it's so beautiful how these, you know, how we're connected in different ways. But this is a four book release year for me. So it's been a busy run. You know, we had Rock and White Throw come out in March about selective mutism, and then my memoir Where Rivers Part, and then Cage came out in May, and then in September I have The Diamond Explorer coming out, and that is my debut middle grade fiction. So it's been a really fast moving year for me. I can't believe we're more than halfway through. I'm still processing the first half of the year, even as I'm gearing up for the second half. Next year we're hoping that we can push this book through. We're still negotiating with a publisher, but it's called The Christmas Code, and we want it out before Christmas. So that's going to be a big of a push. And then after that, 2026, there will be a young adult memoir coming out from me, a story of our own, because I always promised my siblings I would tell them all of these stories, and they'd say, when do we get a story of our own? And so that one's coming out. And then I know that we have another book coming out from Learner, a picture book that I'm excited about, which is very much about how a young writer becomes, how this young writer became. And then potentially 2 titles from the University of Minnesota Press. So it's going to be a run for me, a beautiful, and it's interesting as a writer who spends so much time inside, another push into the world, a series of pushes.
Well, and so, like you said, such a busy a few years coming up. And just briefly, I mean, I know you have a lot of experience writing for adults and for children. Was it much of a switch for you to do the middle grade and the YA, or did that feel really natural?
The middle grade was hard because it's fiction, and so I had to free myself. Fiction comes from a different place. So of all of the books I've worked on, that one has taken the longest. And it's a thin book. It's like 150 pages, but it took me a long time. You know, the thing about it was that I never thought, I've always wanted to know what happens when we die. That's been a big question all of my life. I never thought that I would begin to explore it in the realm of a middle grade fiction.
Right.
But that's exactly what happened. For the young adult memoir, it's in my head, it's so funny. In my head, it's so fun. I don't know what it's like for my editor. I have edits left to do for that one this summer as well. But I loved it. It was so much fun just to talk about the corner laundromat where I spent countless hours reading books and waiting to dry and wash clothes. And that horrible journey back home when the clothes are in the bags and we're too small to carry it, my older sister and I. And so we can't look left or right because if we do, then we'll start laughing at each other. And if we laugh at each other, then the clothes would fall on us or to the ground. I mean, it's such a different world, but I love it. It's been such a gift to me.
Well, I can't wait for those to come out. And when they do, we'll be sure to share about it in our stories. And could you want to talk about any projects you have going on?
Yes, Kalia, I'm so excited for those books, especially the middle grade one. I feel like, yeah, those are perfect to read with my 12-year-old daughter. But okay, about me, yeah, Kalia mentioned that I have a book with a small publisher based in Minneapolis coming out, Green Card Voices. It's a little graphic novel about a Hmong boy in town here as well, and his path to like his career, which he works for the Science Museum as a builder. So it's funny, and he was also in a refugee camp. And then it kind of tells his story, but in a lighthearted way, but also in a moving way, I think. But yeah, that's coming up next. I believe this fall it'll be coming out. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, that's all I have going on.
Oh, I love that. Graphic novels are always a big hit at our house. So I can't wait for that one to come out. And thank you both for being here, for taking the time to talk with us. Anybody who's watching, if you joined us late, don't worry, it's going to be up in a few minutes on Instagram, and then later we will have it up on our YouTube channel. So Kalia and Khou, thanks to both of you today.
Thank you for having us. Khou, it's always a delight to be in conversation.
Yeah, same here. Love seeing you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.